All right, guys, so today our mini lesson is going to really focus on getting ready to start constructing our essays. You are going to be taking notes on this mini lesson because we are going to be applying the strategies that we think about and learn about in this lesson for the rest of the week as we go through the construction process of our essays. And so today, what we are going to learn about are tips and tools for the literary essayist, which is what you are going to be throughout this writing process. So all of you need to have your writer's notebook out, and you need to be following along as we take notes here. So the first thing we're going to take notes on is this idea about what a literary essayist does. So a literary essayist uses prompts to push thinking about our understanding about the character in the text. We're going to talk a lot today about character and theme, okay? So you guys have been doing this over the last few weeks and the Show What You Know test that you did yesterday. All of these were meant to help you think deeply about how you understand the main character in the story and think about the main character in a much deeper, bigger level. So what I want you to think about right now is how will thinking about the character in our class novel in a deeper way, how will this make our essay better? So another thing that literary essayists do is they reread what they've written and reread what is in the book to find connections, which is something that we've been talking about quite a bit, and create theories about those characters. Remember, we referred to these theories as inferences last week. We created an inference based on the text clues in the book and our background knowledge that we have, and suddenly these beautiful things called inferences come out, and they are theories. Now, you can you can choose to have a literary essay that's based on a theory about a character or a theme. We're going to talk more about this in a second. But we did this already with our citations last week. Now we're just going to kind of clarify those citations a little bit better. We will probably do this again and again as we build our essay. If it is helpful for you to mark the page in our class novel where you have citations that you could go back to and look at and use inside of your essay, grab some sticky notes to help you do just that. Literary essayists also use oral and written strategies to consider how and why their theories are supported, making sure that their theories are worth proving. Things like evidence help us do this, right? We talked about this a lot last week. By the end of this week, you will have a working thesis. And a thesis is based on what theory you have. The difference is a theory is not proven yet, where a thesis has evidence to support it. Working means that the thesis is not going to be 100% perfect, but you will have something to work with. It's probably going to feel like just a start. Next week, we will work with a writing partner to think through our thesis statements together and brainstorm if there is enough evidence in our book to support our theories. So this connects back to the oral and written strategies. We got to talk about it. We got to write about it. That's what we're going to do. So now we're going to talk specifically about how to write a literary essay about a character. A lot of you have felt a connection to one or more of the characters in the story that we just wrote. So how do we do this? How do we write a literary essay about a character? You may choose to do that. Well, the first thing that we need to do is we need to reread selected bits of the book. Be ready to do this. I get a lot of times readers go, well, I already read this section, so what's the point of rereading it? Or I already read this book, what's the point of rereading it? And guys, it's just like watching certain movies over and over again. Every time you watch that movie, you maybe see a detail that you didn't see your first or second time through. That is why we reread. You should be taking notes on all of these bullet points here. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to notice the details. We notice the details the more times we reread. Then we're going to think about those details, talk about those details, and write about those details. So we can answer the question, why does this detail stick out to me? Because if you can think, talk, and write about a specific detail, it impacts you in some way, and that is worth talking about. The next thing we're going to do as a literary essayist, if we decide to write an essay about a character, is we're going to think about the character as if the character was a real person. And we can do this by asking ourselves the question, think, what does this character really want? And we can write about it. If we can create an inference or a theory about what this character really wants and we can write about it, there's probably going to be something in there worth creating our entire literary essay about. This could help us use thought prompts, like maybe the character wants this, or perhaps the character longs for that, to help us create a theory. And so we are going to think about our characters and their deep down internal motivations. Those are big words. What drives the character? What motivates them? And could that be a part of your literary essay? Another strategy that you could use if you decide to write your literary essay about a character is to try to generate or come up with an idea about a character that encompasses or includes the whole character and the whole text. So what does that mean? Well, the whole character means not just the character you meet at the beginning of the story, but how the character starts, progresses, and ends up in that story. That should encompass the beginning, middle, and end of the book, and that should encompass the whole change that a main character goes through. That change, that whole character, might be worth writing about all in itself. This might be my most favorite strategy if you wanted to write an essay about your character. This strategy talks about searching for the most compelling evidence that supports the claim that you have, and then add it to your essay. Compelling means like on the edge of your seat. It is the most evident or even dramatic type of evidence that you could find. Compelling evidence could look like a couple of different things. It could look like a quote of some part of the text. It could storytell from other parts of the text, or it could be a summary of other parts of the text. A quote would be a direct citation, but then these storytellings of other parts and summarizing of other parts, that would be a citation too. It would just be an indirect one, and we're going to talk loads more about that later. So we already talked about how to write a character-based literary essay. Now we're going to talk about how to write a theme-based literary essay. So here are some strategies that you could use if you were interested in writing a literary essay about the theme of our class novel. The first thing you could do is think about the character's motivations, problems, and most importantly, amigos, lessons that were learned, and look for patterns. You know, in the book Wonder, is kindness something that constantly keeps coming up? In the book Out of My Mind, is persistence something that always keeps coming up? In the book The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, is adventure or pushing the boundaries always something that keeps coming up? Another strategy that you can think about is, what does the character want and what gets in the way? Whatever gets in the way is probably connected to the theme somehow, and I wonder if that would be worth exploring in your literary essay. Another strategy is, how does the character try to resolve his problems? The resolution of problems usually comes around at the same time of a book where a theme in a book is revealed. And so that might be worth creating an entire literary essay about as well. Think about The Boy in the Striped Pajamas and the ending, guys. I could write a whole paper about just the last chapter alone. The next strategy, what lessons does the character learn from trying to resolve his problems? Lessons are a big deal, dudes, because that's usually what we as readers are left with as also. And then, of course, this idea of patterns. Notice how we've said this word patterns over and over again, because an author is so intentional about sprinkling things over and over again throughout the story that lead right back to this big idea right here called the theme. Let's keep thinking. Here we go again, guys. The word patterns. Think about the patterns that you see in universal terms and ask yourself, what big life lessons or what themes can the reader draw from the patterns in this story? You could just spend your whole essay answering that question about our class novels. After you do that, you could then craft a claim that's based on one of those themes. After you do that, after you craft that claim, then it's your job to search for evidence. You get to become the investigator to support that claim. And then here are some strategies that you could add it to your essay. You could quote a part of the text, you could storytell other parts of the text, or you could summarize other parts of the text. Same strategies here that we used for adding adding evidence as we used for characters, but the focus is just different. All of this is theme-based, okay? Some of you are going to feel more connected to a character in our class novel. Others of you are going to feel more connected to the theme in a class novel. You guys are going to get to decide, what is your literary essay going to be about? The theme of our novel or a character in our novel? The choice is yours. Here's kind of more of a how-to on how to get started with writing your essays, introductions and conclusions. We use buzzwords here like thesis and how it emphasizes things, the message that you believe the author has, and leaving the readers something to think about. I want you to read through this entire slide here and take notes, take notes, take notes, because we are going to really utilize this as we continue to construct our essays. So please make sure you have notes on all of this, especially this idea of transitioning. So dudes, now it's your turn to decide. What are you going to write your literary essay about? Is it going to be about the theme of your class novel, the character in the class novel? Your decision on what your literary essay is going to be about is going to need to be made by Thursday, because that is when we are going to start working on our thesis statement. So get ready, essayists. We're getting started here. Feel free to look back at the show what you know you had yesterday. Look back at the other work we've done in our writer's notebook over the last couple of weeks, because you've really been thinking about this a lot. And now it's time to make a decision so we can get started with building our essay. Have fun, get creative, and let's get started.